Moin, wir sind heute mal wieder bei Second Thought dabei. Da waren wir ja schon mal, wo es um die neue Red Scare ging. Das fand ich ein fantastisches Video. Diesmal ist der Videotitel The White House won't stop posting Nazi propaganda, here's why. Ich bin sehr gespannt, weil ich finde das immer sehr, sehr interessant. Eigentlich, wenn man in die Staaten guckt, kann man sich immer sicher sein in unserem aktuellen System, auf was man sich so die nächsten 5 bis 10 Jahre bereit machen muss.
This is Adolf Hitler's My New Order, the sequel to Mein Kampf. In it, you'll find a collection of Hitler's most famous speeches. And if you're wondering where to find it, don't bother with a local bookstore. You can start with the
Wir machen wieder für
President's
alle.
bedside table. According to a 1990 interview in Vanity Fair, that's where Ivana Trump frequently saw her then-husband, now president, put this little number down after reading it.
Achso, wir hatten beim letzten Mal, glaube ich, auch geguckt, es gibt, glaube ich, keine deutschen Untertitel. Automatisch erzeugt. Automatisch übersetzen können wir lassen. Das bringt gar nichts.
From time to time. And we have reason to believe this is true, since a friend confirmed giving the book to Trump, something he only admitted to after an oh-so-convincingly innocent "Why? Who's asking?" Okay, yep, think we're done here. Let's wrap it up. Give him the mustache thing. That's enough activism. Okay, but actually there is something we need to talk about first. No one thinks that Trump just reading this book or other normal things like getting Heil Hitlered by his friends
Denkt ihr, Donald Trump hat jemals ein Buch gelesen?
is actually incriminating. So why then is the White House swimming in Nazi propaganda?
The administration has rolled out a campaign across departments that draws on images and ideas borrowed from right-wing and white nationalist circles.
Der
One
Patriot,
homeland,
Alter.
one people, one heritage. Remember who you are, American.
Ob Mel Gibson damit fein ist? Wie ist denn eigentlich Mel Gibson drauf politisch? Hat er sich mal irgendwie da positioniert?
I am the storm. We are the storm. The light will defeat the dark. We will prevail
Ja, nur ihr seid das Böse. Ihr seid das Dunkle.
over the forces of wickedness and evil.
Wickedness.
They cannot imagine
Wicked.
what they have awakened. They cannot conceive of the army that they have arisen in all of us.
Okay, friends, quick sponsor drama for you. I want to make sure I respect your time, so if you're not interested in the juicy details or supporting the channel, feel free to skip ahead to this timestamp. Those of you who have stuck around,
What?
thank you. As you probably know, for the past about 2 years now, we've been working with Aura. I have praised them
Was war
for
das
being
nochmal?
a good service and for having the guts to sponsor a channel like ours, which most other sponsors won't touch. Last week, every creator working with Aura got a corporate email out of the blue that basically said, hey, instead of this fair deal that we've had for the past multiple years, we're changing it so that we make all the money and you get nothing. XOXO corporate.
Cool.
I have tried everything in my power to negotiate and get them to be reasonable because the new terms are genuinely offensive, but they won't budge and have basically given all of us the finger. So,
Dann würde ich auch sagen, verpisst euch.
long story short, it sure would be a shame if everyone who signed up for Aura for my sake were to cancel their subscriptions and tell all their friends not to use Aura. But personal pettiness aside, this really leaves the channel in the lurch. I swear this past year has been just one financial kick in the teeth after another. We had come to count on that predictable monthly revenue since up till now Aura had been so consistent. So I guess the lesson I keep failing to learn is that socialist creators should never trust anyone who is not ideologically aligned with their mission. Brands and liberal platforms will disappoint you every single time. So, all this to say, we are doubling down on Means TV and Patreon.
Kommt euch das bekannt vor aus eurem alltäglichen Leben? Wenn ihr auf Arbeit nicht mehr so performt, wie ihr solltet oder so? Wenn ihr alt werdet oder so? Was eure Kapitalisten denn so meinen?
I've already started putting up some additional exclusive content on Means. Right now, we've got Second Thought After Dark companion episodes for each of the last few uploads. They're a lot of fun. I've also got a 15-minute rant about the Iran situation. I mentioned before that our production cycle is so slow here on YouTube that I wanted to get some kind of statement out on Iran before too long, but we are working on an Iran episode for YouTube. It'll just take a little bit. And then I'm also strongly considering finally pulling the trigger on making the multi-hour propaganda masterclass I've been thinking about for a couple years. If that sounds interesting to you, let me know in the comments. We've had enough of the corporate nonsense here at Second Thought. I think it's time we actually do the socialist thing and build our own vision of the future. And that means direct support for the channels we care about and coming together to build the best media ecosystem we can. If you're a fan of Second Thought, please do consider signing up for Means TV using any of the links in the description.
Warum habt ihr das nicht sowieso schon gemacht, dass Leute euch crowdfunden können?
I've got a 20% off discount for you or 50% off for existing patrons. If you're not interested in Means, consider tossing us a few bucks on Patreon. You get a bunch of cool perks there too. And finally, if you're a socialist content creator, get in touch. Send me an email and let's talk about getting you on Means TV. It's time we took matters into our own hands and supported each other here. So thank you for taking the time to listen, and thank you especially to everyone who chooses to support what we're doing here at Second Thought. This channel.
Ich finde das so crazy, ne, dass die sich als sozialistische Content Creator erklären, weil sie einfach nur die Dinge so benennen, wie sie sind. Finde ich wild. Aber es ist halt Amerika und das, was wir hier halt auch sehen und sehen werden. Das sehen wir jetzt schon mit der Verschiebung des Overtone-Fensters, dass Leute, die eigentlich komplett mittig stehen, dass die halt Linksextreme sind, weil sie einfach die Dinge so benennen, wie sie sind.
Now especially would really not exist without your support. All right, back to the show. The White House has a Nazi problem. In the last couple of months, we've seen everything from Big Brother banners to genocidal city pop coming not from 4chan or edgelord Twitter accounts, but official government channels.
Was ist das hier? Hier kommt die Flut oder was?
You might remember Stephen Miller, the deputy chief of staff at the White House, giving a speech at Charlie Kirk's memorial. It turns out that speech strongly resembled one by Goebbels, the Nazi propaganda minister.
Ja, wenn man halt so Vorbilder hat, dann zitiert man die halt mal.
Same metaphors, imagery, same victimhood narrative, and same appeals to white supremacy and revenge. The DHS Twitter account has had a similar problem. Recently, they've used lyrics from a white nationalist song as promotional material, as well as a neo-Nazi slogan, and so has the DOL's Twitter. More than once. More than twice. And
Ja, das meinte ich gerade. Ist Mel Gibson fein damit? Oder
more than once. More than twice.
ist nicht Mel Gibson... Warte mal, ist nicht Mel Gibson eigentlich ein Aussie? Nee. Bring ich da was durcheinander gerade? Wartet mal, ich muss Mel Gibson kurz googeln. Mel Gibson. Nee, ist ein US-Amerikaner. Okay, mit irgendwem habe ich den US-amerikanisch-irischer. Ja, finde ich sowieso so weird. Wann sind dem seine Vorfahren nach Amerika rübergezogen? Wahrscheinlich 200 Jahre vorher. In Peekskill, New York. Alles klar, okay. Ist der damit fein? Ich weiß, der hatte mal so eine Zeit, wo der extrem aufgefallen ist mit so ja, auch so Verschwörungsscheiß. Also ich kann mir das gut vorstellen, dass der damit fein ist, in diesem Schwachsinn da vorzukommen. Oh ja, der hat einen sehr langen Absatz über Kontroversen. Gut, ich kann es mir gut vorstellen.
And then once more back on the DHS account. For months now, we've seen post after post using white supremacist, far-right, and at times even outright Nazi rhetoric. The White House has called immigration an invasion, called the opposition wicked and evil, made Trump and ICE out to be irreproachable, called themselves the heirs to the Roman Empire, and implored their supporters to defend a declining, i.e. less white, nation. This is all very Nazi stuff, of course, and it shouldn't surprise us too much from a government that's had 1, 2, 3, 4, and who could forget 5, oops, there's a Nazi in our ranks, moments. And now that these same government channels have also become vehicles for outright denial of reality, it seems like all this isn't really a Nazi problem for the White House. It's a Nazi project. You probably...
Der reichste Mensch der Welt übrigens. Macht da einen Hitlergruß. Das, Alter, wir leben in einer scheiß Matrix. Das kann nicht echt sein.
Remember that after the murders in broad daylight of Renee Good, Keith Porter, and Alex Preddy by ICE, for example, the White House has, in direct contradiction with video evidence, lied about the citizens they killed. Even though the blame is clearly on ICE, the admins called journalists questioning the dozens of deaths at ICE's hands hacks
Die Linken!
and barraged the press with statements that blame protesters for dying at the hands of the American Gestapo.
Ist alles das Gleiche.
Why, right? With everything that's happening, people being disappeared, ICE officers killing and arresting people indiscriminately, the fact that people have to scream at the top of their lungs deep into the night so their neighbors don't get rounded up.
Ja, da habe ich auch Videos zu gesehen.
Why do all this? What is the point of this propaganda when it is all...
Musst du dir mal vorstellen, in was für einer Welt die dort schon leben. Dass du da als Nachbar deine Nachbarn davor warnen musst, dass da die Gestapo kommt, um dich abzuholen, Alter. Ist das geisteskrank.
so blatantly cruel? We've known for months that they're not rounding up violent criminals. Why even lie if no one believes this shit?
Vielleicht glauben sie es ja selbst.
Because that's all they have. In his book, Disaster Nationalism, Richard Seymour writes that the only thing the far right can actually deliver is adrenaline and revenge. Not happiness, not solutions,
Ja.
just anxiety and the immediate relief of, quote, a shot of confidence and a thrill of collective hate.
Ah, kommt euch das bekannt vor? Von deutschen Rechten? Von NPD bis AfD? Klingt für mich irgendwie alles nach demselben.
That's because in every single far-right regime, the arc of history looks the exact same. First, they hijack the rhetoric of other political
Entschuldigung, wenn ihr meine Tasse hier hört. Ich muss nebenbei noch ein bisschen hydrieren.
parties, particularly the left. As the opposition, the far right promises to solve the problems of the middle and lower classes that are ignored by the establishment. Poverty, low wages, inflation. The far right promises these things can be solved, but not with radical change, only with radical violence. And it always fails. Under Mussolini, Italian wages fell back 30 years. Incomes fell under Bolsonaro in Brazil, and by the end, only those earning 5 times the average wage still stood by him. Modi and Duterte both worsened
Die machen was für die Armen. Die machen was für das eigene Volk. Ja. Sieht man ja.
inequality and poverty in their respective countries. And neither of Trump's terms have helped average Americans. Neither during the first term when
Genau so ist es hier. Und sie sprechen es ja offen aus, man kann es ja sogar nachlesen. Alle politischen Maßnahmen der AfD helfen nicht ihrer Wählerschaft. Nicht mal die Trottel, die sie wählen, hilft das. Das hilft nur Überreichen. Ich verstehe es nicht. Wie kann man sich selber abschaffen? Wie kann man gegen sich selber wählen? Man hat diese Wahl in einer Demokratie und man wählt die Demokratie ab. Ich verstehe das nicht. Wie kann man, also wirklich, so fern von einer Wahrnehmung der Welt ich kann das einfach nicht verstehen.
wages stayed flatter than under any other administration, nor today thanks to the mess of tariff inflation.
Genauso in den Staaten. Wie kann man da Trump wählen? Ich meine, ich hab's kommen sehen, beim ersten und beim zweiten Mal. Aber wie einfach? Wie?
And mass layoffs. When the far right gets into power, their first order of business is cutting workers' rights and union busting and making the bosses happy. And if people starve, they don't care about the breadlines. But
Richtig.
people do. We do.
Das ist doch mal progressive Politik.
When fascists promise to help workers and things don't get better, when reality doesn't match up to the
Ne, wer das hier nicht kennt, ich ertrage die Welt nur mit Zynismus und Sarkasmus. Anders ertrage ich es nicht mehr.
campaign promises, the only thing left for the fascist right is violent escalation. And here a new mechanism starts to kick in. Far-right leaders and their supporters mutually radicalize each other. First, the state starts creating propaganda like the kind we've seen the last few months. Foreigners are dehumanized and cast as threats.
Wir müssen nur zusammenstehen gegen alles, gegen alle anderen.
supporters are told that their nation is under threat by these others, and the language of violence against enemies begins to permeate every speech and image published by the regime.
Ich habe das schon vor Jahren gesagt. Durch diese Kräfte werden wir wieder in diese Kriege reingestürzt, die wir jetzt über Jahrzehnte, eigentlich fast ein ganzes Jahrhundert lang nicht mehr hatten. In diesem Ausmaß. Na klar, hat es immer irgendwo Kriege gegeben, aber nicht in diesem Ausmaß, wie es zur Zeit des Zweiten Weltkriegs und davor war. Und wie es jetzt halt wieder startet mit Kriegen in der Ukraine, mit Kriegen im Nahen Osten generell, von Palästina bis jetzt Iran. Oder immer mal wieder diese Angriffe hinten Pakistan oder was in Thailand da abging. Das wird immer wieder passieren jetzt. Und das wird immer schlimmer werden mit diesen nationalen Kräften.
Leaders parade around in military and law enforcement outfits, holding guns, talking about centennial revenge, and tangling up humiliation and fear with a myth of violence as heroism.
Blessed are the peacemakers. Ja, ihr seid aber die Kriegsmakers.
Predictably, inevitably, people start enforcing the fascist program themselves. Hate crimes, homemade fascist memes, mass shootings by lone wolves, and soon enough, without it being official policy yet, police officers start killing. Not because it's the law, but because the tension keeps rising and the enemies have been designated. Here's where things mutually reinforce.
Genau, jeder, der nicht auf Linie gebürstet ist, ist ein Feind.
Once that happens, the administration now has a new opportunity to get the attention away from their economic failure and show their supporters that they're listening to them. These killings become retribution for the fact that things aren't getting better. They're both a replacement for progress and get spun as proof that the regime can't succeed because of these outsiders. So instead of pumping the brakes, they endorse the violence. They continue to demonize foreigners, and their base gets a pass to radicalize even further. If you look at the kind of stuff they're posting right now, you can see this really clearly.
Ja. Das ist von Homeland Security. Alter. Das ist so crazy, Alter. Fascho-Posts von der Homeland Security auf einer Fascho-Plattform. What a time to be alive!
This looks like some shit your cousin would make. The White House isn't indoctrinating its base. They are egging each other on. For the record, this is how anti-Semitism under the Nazis grew to such extremes. Before the party had made anti-Semitism official state policy with the Nuremberg laws, mobs had already heeded the party's language and begun pogroms against Jews.
Ja, es beginnt halt mit der Sprache. Und das sehen wir hier auch wieder.
All over Germany, local registrars had already started preventing marriages between, quote, Aryans and non-Aryans.
Das ist sowieso das dümmste Thema überhaupt in der Zeit. Dieses Aria-Gequatsche, das ist so hohl.
Synagogues, Jewish homes, and shops owned by Jews were being set on fire, and soon the police started arresting so-called race defilers before that had become an official law. Like in every other far-right regime, propaganda wasn't just beamed into the minds of ordinary people, turning them into ethno-nationalists. The state and the population became entangled in their mutually reinforcing desires to ignore everything getting worse around them by finding common pleasure in living out violent fantasies. Things don't improve, but at least someone is doing something.
Ja.
It's why so many Trump
Endlich macht mal einer was. Endlich sagt's mal einer.
supporters today believe he's kept his promises.
Alter, da steht so ein 80-jähriger, demenzkranker alter Sack und macht da Hey Macarena auf der Bühne. Hey, wirklich. Die USA sind so gefickt.
Groceries aren't less expensive. Electricity costs haven't been slashed in half. America's reputation is in the trash. Of course, going after every brown person in the country wasn't going to help with any of that. But MAGA supporters see the zip ties and the chains and the planes and the dead protesters, and for a moment, that relieves the anxiety that there's nothing to be done about their problems. Except that little moment where the anxiety is gone doesn't last forever. Seymour describes this like killing a spider. For an arachnophobe, no amount of killing spiders ever cures the fever. For an ethno-nationalist, no amount of violence is ever going to be enough. The more people are brutalized by ICE, the more it's apparent that it doesn't solve anything, the more the anxiety builds and the need for violence comes back. Under the Nazis, the same thing was true. As the end of the war was on the horizon, as everyone saw that all hope was lost for Germany, Hitler didn't order his troops to stand down and admit defeat. He commanded them to keep fighting. This recklessness catapulted the army's losses into the hundreds of thousands and gave Hitler a new internal target to replace the dwindling Jewish scapegoat. In the last year of Hitler's rule, the courts sentenced 30,000 and executed 20,000 German soldiers for refusing to fight or, quote, undermining the war effort. Repression increased on the German population to the point that any criticism of the leadership was met with terror. Officials began organizing death marches, first from concentration camps around the country, killing hundreds of thousands of prisoners, most of them Jewish. Then, in the final year, German police, SS, and party members began leading marches from within German cities, repressing further any sign of dissent from the general population. The regime never runs out of enemies because mass violence never gets results. And the kind of things that do get results, they don't want to do. They're not inviting union leaders to the White House. They invite tech CEOs. They're not raising the minimum wage or making healthcare free or stopping price gouging.
Oh.
They're just killing some proles. All they have is the spectacle. So it doesn't matter if it's all lies. It's the only thing on.
Der Volker Pispers hat mal gesagt, zu diesen Zeiten, das war aber angelehnt an das, was wir für einen Müll im Fernsehen vorgesetzt bekommen, mit diesen ganzen Sendungen auf RTL und sowas. Je trockener das Brot, desto, ich weiß gar nicht, wie jetzt, je trockener das Brot, desto lustiger die Spiele oder so. Also dieses alte Narrativ aus dem Römischen Reich, diese Kolosseumsspektakel, das ist so passend. Starkes Video wieder. Auch durch einen kompletten Zufall gefunden, das Video. Ich habe dieses Thumbnail gesehen mit dem Red Scare Kanal, noch nie was von gesehen. Und einen richtigen Gem gefunden. Krass, krass, krass. Geht darüber, lasst ein Like da und ein Abo. Und wenn ihr ein großer sozialistischer Content Creator seid, meldet euch bei denen. Wir sehen uns im nächsten oder in einem anderen Video. Bis dahin, bleibt gesund und haut rein.